Right. All right. Let's try that again. Nope, not what I wanted. All right, blue sheets should be floating around right now. All right, mirror them. That is very wibbly. There we go. It is not letting me pick a resolution. Let's try that. Does that work? We can read that, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Built-in retina display. Excellent.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little chunky. It's not letting me pick a decent resolution that works for both of them. Let's try that.
Yeah, the meeting will have the first needed information, so you make that's not able to work on.
Yeah. Let's try that. Something. You know, we're gonna call that good enough. All right. Get those eventually. All right. No, go away.
What's the green? What's the green? You should try the Linux.
It's just being very slow. Like profoundly slow. All right. Just make it redetect. Oh. Full screen. There we go. Cool. All right, and the mics are live. Fantastic. All right, blue sheets are floating around. Please fill them out as they pass you, and make sure that everybody gets those and get those up to the front of the room when you're done. All right, and hello everybody, and welcome to the first non-inaugural COSE meeting. As you all know, we kicked off this group back in Prague. First off, can I get a volunteer for an XMPP scribe? Nobody volunteers, somebody will be voluntold. Come on, guys. Hannes, you like XMPP, right? Does anybody have XMPP installed? All right, not you, you're president. Karsten, can you do it? Thank you. All right, note taker. Hannes, you have a text editor installed. You have to, come on. It doesn't matter. I think Notepad might be stable enough for a 90-minute meeting. I don't know, unless you're running Win 10. All right, and finally, make sure that you are in the right meeting. This is the COSE meeting. All right, thank you guys. Thank you to our intrepid volunteers for helping us out. Please note the note well. It's very tiny print, and you can find it online. You guys should all know this by now. So this is what we're going to do today. This is a little bit of a shuffle from what was published earlier this week. We had one presenter who wasn't actually able to make it here. We're going to give you a brief introduction, a little bit about COSE tokens, which is something that came up in the ACE meeting. Oh, yes, and my phone making noise at me just reminded me, everybody, please vibrate or mute your phones. Then we have a presentation. Goran's giving us a presentation on ACE object security, and then we're going to dedicate the bulk of the time to the current COSE messages draft and open issues surrounding that. So Jim has a presentation, plus we're going to be running through the issues tracker. So COSE is an acronym for CBOR, Object Signing and Encryption. CBOR is its own acronym. I always forget what it stands for. We suggest you pronounce it COSE. It's not COSE, just because COSE sounds cooler, and that was kind of Kathleen's idea. So it also lets Kapung and I say that we are your COSE chairs. So my name is Justin Richer. I'm an independent consultant. Do a lot of work here with OAuth.
I'm Keboni from Alibaba, and I'm also ACE co-chair, and COSE co-chair. Right. So we are building what XML DSIG was to XML and Jose was to JSON. COSE will be to CBOR. It's kind of a different underlying object model and data structure, and in some parts of it, at least, serialization. And we're building encryption envelopes around it. The initial idea of the group was to do the things that we did in Jose, but using CBOR as a base instead of JSON as a base. So signing and validation, encryption and decryption, key representation, and there's a whole lot of stuff that is out of scope for this working group. Key management, identity management, and stuff that you wish Jose had that it didn't end up getting in under the wire there. There's a particular focus in this group on constrained environment. There's a lot of overlap here with the core and ACE and related Internet of Things type work. And the thing we have to keep in mind is that all of us have a different idea of what constrained means. And we are trying to build something in COSE that could actually work in a lot of these different types of constrained environments. So just because a particular decision might not optimize for your particular constraint, keep in mind it might work very well for someone else's. And we need to kind of skate that balance between these different ones. And like I said in Prague, I think there is one fundamental question that we should ask ourselves in this working group with all the decisions that we make, and that is, what would Jose do? Now, I did not wear the t-shirt this time, but I do have the t-shirt. And this question is just something we should ask ourselves. Now, it's not to say we should always do what Jose did, because we're working in a different environment. We're working with different kinds of materials here. But we should at least ask ourselves, what did Jose do? What would Jose do in this type of situation? Because that's kind of our starting point. That's our base. In this working group, we're going to drive consensus on the mailing list as per IETF tradition. We are open to having phone calls and in-person IETF sessions. We don't have any phone calls scheduled right now. Haven't needed any yet since Prague. We are planning, obviously we have a face-to-face meeting here in Yokohama. If you didn't realize that, I don't know why you're in this room. And we're planning to keep having in-person sessions as long as at least the main messages draft is driving forward, and we've got good work to do. And the list is, of course, cozy@ietf.org. Active spec work in this group is happening on GitHub, and the editor and chairs have write access. Non-editor people can submit pull requests, and we've actually had a few people do that to great effect so far. And we encourage people to submit both issues and pull requests. We are tracking issues via the GitHub trackers, and in the intervening time between Prague and right now, the chairs have decided that we need to do a better job at tracking issues through the GitHub tracker, so we are going to do our best to make that work a little bit more smoothly going forward. we do still think it's worthwhile, and we are doing that. So we should try to keep this thing, in my view, as simple as possible, but no simpler than that. And that's especially with a mind towards these types of constrained environments. Remember, simple in your definition might not always be the universal simple. There's optimization for message size and code size, and CPU usage and battery usage and radio usage and all sorts of other things in this space. We absolutely need to pay attention and learn from what's being used elsewhere, particularly in Jose. And I want to continue to encourage this group to realize the phrase, you ain't gonna need it. Because there are a lot of times, especially when you're doing a general purpose enveloping type specification like we are building here in this group, where there's lots of shiny bells and whistles and options that sound really, really cool for your little special snowflake unicorn corner case. And we need to realize when those might not actually be worth it. And as always, we're going to run on rough consensus and running code. You might not always get your way, but you're much more likely to win an argument if you can actually implement the blasted thing. So the working group list is cozy@ietf.org. You can get a hold of Kapung and I with cozychairs@ietf.org. And that, in a nutshell, is Cozy. We're now going to move on to the second presentation. And that is Cozy tokens. This is something I wrote. I threw these slides together about 20 minutes ago. So we'll see how much this actually makes sense. The whole idea behind a Cozy token, and this is something that has been bandied about a little bit before, but was brought up a little bit more concretely in the ACE group this week here at IETF. In Jose, we had the JWS, JWE, JWA that defined the cryptographic methods and envelopes. And this is analogous to the Cozy messages spec that we have right now. Yes, we have one spec that handles all of those and key representation and other things like that, whereas Jose had like 12. But they're still analogous to each other. Jose also had, as part of its suite, though not as part of its working group, the JSON web token. We do not have an equivalent of that in the Cozy working group or in the Cozy ecosystem. And this is a common payload description. So say you have a signed Cozy object, what do you put in the middle of it, and how do you kind of process those kinds of things? This has been brought up in a couple of different contexts. People have been talking about, message sequences and like expirations and some other stuff. And there's been some question of like, does this actually make more sense in an application payload versus the cryptographic envelopes? And there's also a lot of stuff that really wants to use Cozy as its transport mechanism, and having a common format in the middle of this thing, like Jot gave us with Jose, would be a really beneficial thing to lots of different groups. So it's I've got a twofold question that I want the group to think about. We're not going to decide this here today, but I want the group to think about this. First off, should we build it? Should we build a Cozy token? So for historical perspective, Jot has been the single largest driving factor for Jose. More than anything else, it's been Jot that's been driving the adoption and usage of Jose. And we also have at least one ACE draft, maybe two. I don't think Decaf mentions it explicitly, but there's at least one draft that mentions this notion of there's this Cozy token kind of thing that's not even really real yet. Hannes?
Since you presumably asked the group what they think about this, so to the first question, I guess you're asking more as like, is other people in this group interested to do their work here, or?
I'm not asking that yet.
Oh, okay. So what are you asking?
Should it be built? No, not are we interested in doing it. Should it be built at all? Is the first question. Corollary to that is, where should we build it? Presuming the answer to the first question is yes.
Given that some people have already worked on this, presumably the answer to the first question is, from those people who worked on that, yes.
Can I get a? Can I just get a sense of the room? Just very informal. Stephen, I don't know how you want to run this. Just hands. Get an idea who likes it. You don't care. All right. So totally informal. Who thinks a cozy token is a good idea? Hands up. All right. Who thinks it's a bad idea? All right. Who doesn't have enough information? And who doesn't give a flying rat? Thank you. We have 3 votes for the flying rat, so that's important. All right, so that's most people think that it's a good idea. So there may be enough interest to actually push that at some point.
Yeah. Just a minor add-on to your other slide that you had showed beforehand. You mentioned an abstract concept in the appendix of one of the documents, draft site, something you find actually a specification style of write-up.
Yeah.
It's just not in a separate.
Right.
Because it's conceptually very similar. So all it does is it takes the existing JWT and the existing registry and says, oh, yeah, great, you can encode it differently.
Yeah, and ultimately that may be exactly what a cozy token is. It's JOT in CBOR, and if there is literally there are 2 lines in the spec. It says go read JOT, now encode the payload in CBOR. If that's all it says, great, we're done. But somebody has to write it out.
Kathleen asks for polls, please give a readout.
Okay. Sorry about that, Kathleen. So lots of hands went up for yes, we ought to do it, or yes, it's a good idea. A couple of hands went up for no, it's not a good idea. A couple of hands went up for not enough information. Actually, like half a hand went up for not enough information, and then 3 hands went up for they don't give a flying rat.
Okay, Göran Selander. So I'm co-author of one of the drafts, or the draft where this is in attendance. Right. And I think that there is probably more to think about than just making this CBOR encoding. And I'm just concerned now that ACE is actually trying to hit on this OAuth profile, that it won't get sufficiently compact or suited for the constrained environment. And I just want that concern to be raised here, okay, that there might be other constraints than just mapping OAuth or encoding JOTs into CBOR.
Okay, duly noted. And that actually feeds into the next question of where's the best place to build this thing? So for historical reasons, which I will actually strongly argue are not relevant to this discussion, JOT was built in the OAuth working group. That said, that is where JOT was built. And a lot of JOT people, if they're not sick of the OAuth working group, still kind of hang out in the OAuth working group. Granted, I look around the room, I also see a lot of the JOT people here in the room with us here in COSY. One of the things that the COSY working group has in its favor is that we have this notion of constrained environments and building things that that fit well in this space, no pun intended. And the problem here with either of these is that for any group to pick up this work, it would be a rechartering effort, because this is very distinctly outside the work of COSY as it stands right now. We are chartered to build the cryptographic methods and envelopes, and it is definitely outside of OAuth, and it's arguably outside of ACE as well. So ACE could maybe kind of get away with it, but for it to be its own thing and stand alone, it probably should be. It's saying I didn't put ACE on the slide here, but that is an option, and that is that's pretty much all I had for COSY tokens. Now, because this is going to require a rechartering somewhere, this is a discussion I want us to have on the list. So if you raised your hand for any of the 4 previous options, we're going to let's start that thread on the list and figure out you know, what you think a COSY token is and where we ought to actually be building that. I think we can start the discussion on the COSY list, and then it can land wherever it needs to. Blue sheets floating around, and we should be ready to go.
Could you say that? You mentioned ACE here, and
yes,
maybe that is actually a good candidate, because we're anyway going to understand the profiling of OAuth and using this. So I think that should not be excluded beforehand.
It was only excluded because, like I said, I wrote this part of the presentation about 20 minutes ago, and I didn't think of it. So it was it's not an omission on purpose, just laziness.
Speaking of which, Goran or Francesca, you're going to do this. Speaker's mic's up there. Here's the clicker. It should click. Yes, upside down. Yes, like that. And it's the two arrow keys, actually. And yep, you go to pointer. Before we go into the next presentation, I see no one at the mic. No questions on cozy tokens or the intro. All right, we're good.
Hi, my name is Francesca Panombini, and I'm working with Göran Selander, John Matson, and Ludwig Seitz on OSCOAP, Object Security for Co-op. So in our draft, we are finally moving towards this adoption of COSE, which is why I'm presenting here. Sorry.
Yep.
So first of all, I wanted to give some context. So why COSE? Because we want a small and compact message format. So one design goal of co-op is to keep the message overhead small, thus limiting the need for fragmentation. So fragmentation. Also for reducing the energy consumption, since as it was also mentioned during the ACE working group, the communication is the most energy eating processing part. And also I wanted to mention this number 127, which is the packet size limit for 6LoWPAN. Since last IETF meeting, I wasn't here, but I followed remotely. There were some questions about what would be a good size. So this is not the limit, but it's just to have this. It's good to have this number in mind when having the measurements and size for the message. So in our OSCOAP, we defined 4 categories which we want to, which are related to our use cases. So MAC signature only and AED and symmetric encryption asymmetric signature. And this can be divided in 2 main categories: integrity protection only or integrity protection and encryption. If you have read our draft, you may know that these are the information elements that we need to fit into the COSE message. So we're trying to, what we want to do is to profile COSE message for our OSCOAP. And these informations are sequence number, which is used for replay protection, context identifier, which define the security context. Then based on if you want integrity protection only or integrity protection and encryption, we may have either a co-op payload or ciphertext, and then signature or MAC. And after that, I'm going to present the mapping for only one of the 4 categories, which I told you before, which were MAC signature only, AED symmetric encryption, asymmetric signature. So this I'm going to show only for MAC, but then the rest of them are analogous, and you can find them in the draft. So here it is. On the left side, you can see the information elements needed, and on the right side, the COSE format. So for example, you can see the sequence number is in the protected part of the header. The context identifier comes in the unprotected part of the recipient, since it's key related information. Then we have the co-op payload here in the payload and the MAC. Also, we propose some modifications in order to have the minimal size possible. As we can say, we want to shrink it as much as possible. So first of all, since we don't see any use case for multiple recipients and multiple signatures, we propose to take those structure away and to flatten out the structure a bit as it was done in the latest version of the COSE draft for COSE encrypt, which became encrypt data in COSE envelope. Also, our security context defines uniquely the cipher suite used, so we don't see the need for sending the ALG parameter. So we propose to remove this. Also, all parameters should be protected when possible. So we propose to remove the unprotected field and to, of course, define the key label values for the introduced parameters. So also I wanted to say that this doesn't mean that we want to modify the existing structures that are in the COSE draft, but maybe suggest new structures that are relevant exactly as for COSE encrypt data and COSE envelope. So this is what a COSE modified profile would look like for Mac. Again, we can see that both sequence number and context identifier go into these protected fields in here, which is the only field left. There is no unprotected field. Payload and MAC. A message type could have a different message type than before. Yeah, and here are the numbers. So I heard in ACE working group that people were asking about numbers. So I was very happy to present this. First of all, I want to say that these calculations are done, or measurements are done for COSE messages without payload. And we have some fixed length fields, which are, we have a sequence number of 3 bytes and a CID of 8, which make a total of 11 bytes. And also based on the use case, which MAC signature, AEID, or SCAS. For in this case, MAC, we have 16 bytes of MAC. So yeah, the total size is the total message size for COSE. So for COSE, as we mapped, so compliant with the actual draft is 53 bytes, and the modified COSE is 37 bytes. And the overhead is basically the message size minus the fixed length fields. So minus 11, minus 16, 26, and 10. Also, before you ask, bound is just a lower bound. So it's just a CBOR encoding of the fields that we need for OSCOAP. Yeah, so as you can see, there is a difference of around 15 bytes between COSE and modified COSE, and which is true for 3 of the 4 use cases. And modified COSE, well, already we saw a really big improvement from the numbers that we presented last time, where we also presented JWS and sorry, yeah, and we can see that we are really close to the lower bound here with the modified COSE. So yeah, these are the numbers. The algorithm that we tested with were each max SHA 256, ECDSA with 60 byte signature, and then AES CCM. And for the signature encryption, symmetric encryption, asymmetric signature, we have a higher difference because we use, for the COSE profile, we use 2 nested COSE structures, while for the modified COSE, we have optimized this to have to be similar to the other use cases. So we have only 11 bytes overhead, while COSE has around 60 bytes overhead. So thank you for your attention. Do you have any comments or questions?
Sandeep here. I think it's great work. I think it's absolutely required to remove the algorithm and have a context identifier, because we see also similar use cases. And we think it's very important to have it. One question is regarding your sequence number and context identifier. You said it's a fixed field. Can we have it as a variable field or? Because we can see different use cases have different requirements.
Yeah, what I meant by fixed field, it's just for these measurements. So we are measuring, for example, some point specifically in when we use it, it's 3 bytes, but of course it is.
So it doesn't mean that it has
No, it
to be
doesn't.
11 bytes together. Okay,
No,
perfect.
of course.
Gus, one quick question. This slide says it's from 2014. Which version of
Sorry, that's
was
my
that?
mistake. No.
Which version of COSE was that?
This is the version 05, so now we're 06, but it doesn't. I don't take COSE encrypt and COSE envelope into account, but.
So how will those numbers change with 06?
Well, since with the COSE envelope we don't have the recipient information that that would diminish the difference between the two overhead. I don't know exactly the number, but.
So we are already making moves.
We are already, yes, exactly. We're already moving towards that, and this is basically just maybe pushing it a bit towards that direction, also for the other COSE structures.
Yeah, note that the 2014 is a typo in the slides, and that should not be taken as when these were written. So.
Sorry.
It's okay. Anything else? Mic line is empty. And nothing from Jabber? Or do you want to say something?
Yeah, so on your slide 6, do you want to get any feedback from the working group? Because on slide 6, you list some suggestions. Yeah. Do you want to get any feedback about that one?
Yeah, sure. It's always good.
All right, so perhaps you could bring this list of suggestions to the COSE list and start a thread on that.
Yeah, and also this is of course taken from the draft, so maybe I will just point. I will also point to the paragraph in the draft that.
Thank you. Don't just hand wave at the document and say it exists. Also is good.
Mike Jones, Microsoft. In part of the review I did of draft 6, I noticed that there were several fields that are actually application information, which had been proposed as header parameters, and suggested that those should be moved into a payload, sort of an independent reason to do a web token sort of thing for CBOR. This is all getting around to your presentation. Is there some reason why you're not just putting your sequence number, et cetera, in your payload?
I'm not sure I understand.
Ludwig Seitz answering Mike Jones. We actually also generate the initialization vector for the AAD from the sequence number. So therefore, for us, it seemed like a good idea to have it in the crypto wrapper.
This is Mike again. I'd note that whether it's in the payload or in the protected headers, it is in the cryptographically integrity protected fields.
In their case, what they're planning to do is there is no initialization vector which is transmitted as part of the parameters. Half of the initialization vector comes from pre-shared information between the two parties. The other half of the information is carried in the sequence number. So those two things are put together to form the IV in order to decrypt it. So that cannot be carried inside of the content.
Okay, I'll think about whether that can be interoperably implemented without an application spec, but thank you. Okay, Jim says from the seat, no, it can't be.
And this is honest, and actually it's not the first time that this was proposed. It's actually copied over from, for example, from the DLS specs. So that's, but I came actually to answer some of the questions here. So I like the idea of flattening things. I posted some of my comments to the list. I also argued in favor of not having a mandatory algorithm parameter. I also like your idea of removing these unprotected fields and just have everything protected. I don't see a need for that. And I'm not sure what you mean by item number 4.
Oh, that's basically short fields for the specific stuff that they're using, right?
Because for now, for example, CID, there is no key label for that, or that's just that. It's really
okay. Yeah. That would be important.
It's the
That's
integer
what,
bits. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's basically fighting over the byte registry. All right. Thank you very much. Just hand the clicker over to Jim, please. I will forward. All right. The remainder of this meeting is going to be covered in talking about the current state of the messages draft, and I have about 87 browser tabs open in the background here to go through everything that's in the issues tracker. So we're going to hit both of those if we can. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. So there's this, for historic reasons, there's actually 2 sets of issue. There's 2 issue days debate. This is one is the COSE issues one, and the other one is the one actually associated with the spec. So when I wrote the presentation up, there were a total of 3 items that needed to be dealt with still in the COSE issues one. Obviously, that number has grown some. So we'll quickly go through those 3 things. CFRG issues. I think I've dealt with this. I just haven't managed to tell people what the answer is. And it has to do with modifications I made to the KDF context when you do derivations. Turns out there's an interesting thing, which is probably not relative to us in terms of dealing with static or ephemeral public key shares that can be set to 0. But it is probably only actually of interest to online, but we're just solving it for the store and forward case here anyway. There's just an open item in there for me to make sure that I actually finish doing assigning integers to everything which currently has a string or doesn't have an integer assigned to it yet. And it's just take care to keep me honest. There was a long discussion about adding RSA 1.5 signature algorithms to the set of algorithms which is supported by the document. I have argued long that we should not do it. And this is also kind of overtaken by the fact that I pulled RSA from the main document and put it into the second doc of just additional algorithms and parameters that are going to be registered later. So it's not as relevant to the main doc in that respect. It's now relevant to the secondary doc. However, I would be happy to close this item and say we're not going to do 1.5 because we've been told for umpteen years not to do 1.5, and it's just time we should actually stop doing that.
So with the note to 1.5, the chairs will do a consensus call on that on the list.
Okay.
Well, we can do a non-binding hum or something right now. Sure. Okay. If you would like to keep RSA or define RSA 1.5 in either the main doc or in the secondary doc, it doesn't actually matter to most which. So if you would like RSA 1.5, please hum now. All right, let the notes say relatively weak hum for RSA 1.5. If you would like to not have RSA 1.5 in either the main doc or in the secondary doc, please hum now.
All right, a moderately stronger hum for not keeping it. If you do not have enough information to make this decision, please hum now. No humming, just some back chatter conversation. Thank you, Hannes. Talk during my meeting. I'm going to call you out, man. Although I have to be nice to him. He's taking notes. Oh, dear. All right. Seems like the general sentiment is to not put it in. So I guess we'll say that we'll bring to the list. If you really want to keep it in, please bring it to the list and convince the group why.
Flying rats.
Mike Jones, I'll just note that RSA 15 is different than RSA PSS.
Yes.
And there's an issue about that, which we'll, I'm sure, consider later.
Right. Yeah. So the current algorithms draft defines RSA PSS, if I recall. Could you please realign that? Thanks. Do it. Okay. Did it? All right. Can somebody get the thing to stop freaking out? Thank you. All right. Well, we'll do that.
Okay. Okay. So left over the historic set of issues that I should probably just go ahead and move to the new issue tracker. I just never gotten around to doing it. Is a question of whether we should extend the key ops set of operations to reflect a set of MAC operations. This is not defined in COSE. It's not clear whether or not it's going to make a whole lot of difference one way or the other. The answer is we should probably do it. I just haven't managed to get that far. And there's also a question of dealing with strict encoding and decoding of CBOR and what we need to say and how it needs to be said to make sure that we get things which are going to be canonical in form. By and large, this isn't going to be a huge issue because we're very limited in terms of the set of operations that we need to do for where it needs to be canonically encoded.
I have a comment from the Jabber room. Kathleen says, I'd like to see a very good reason for it if RSA v1.5 is included, shouldn't be in new protocols.
Okay. Thank you. And that I think aligns with the results of the hum from the room. Most people seem to not want it in, so I think the burden of proof is on those who do want it included. All right.
Okay. There's also a set of issues that are actually in the document as comments, because that's actually where historically I've always maintained things, because that means if you put a comment in which says, this refers to section whatever in the version of the document, and I go through and move sections around, the comment moves with it. So there's all sorts of comments in my side of my document about things people have talked about and what old text is, what new text is. So these are basically things that are editorial and structure nature. Changes from Jose and document terminology are basically items I plan to do with more or less just before we go to last call, because at that point I'll actually know what actually needs to be there. There's a issue that Hannes raised, which says as examples should actually only look at things which you can actually do in the base document, so that, for example, if we don't define a creation time, we shouldn't list a creation time in the examples of things that are related to something.
Corollary to that, I believe there's some discussion on the list of appendix examples, wasn't there?
Well, that's basically the next
the next one. Okay, go ahead.
The next item is basically there have been some people who said, oh, we want more examples. I have no problems doing more examples. Please give me an idea of what sort of examples you want to see. Yes. And preferably in an email to the list so I can actually not lose it. And also I've started working on a better pretty print for the examples that are there, so that there'll be much better decorated in terms of making them easier to read.
I posted some examples to the list in an attempt to try to figure out how the specification actually works. I can try to produce more ones that I find interesting, which relate, as you might be guessing already, relate to the token, the Jose token structure, where you have a structure and you sign it, or you MAC it, or you include a key and that part is encrypted and the rest is MAC'd, and these type of constructs. Or also the multicast thing that we discussed is another one, but it's just shared the key up front and these type of things. So there's a few examples on the list, but I'm happy to provide some specific text. I was just not sure on, like, on one hand, I was sort of seeking more feedback on how does the specification actually work, rather than, okay, here is it.
And that was my understanding what you were doing at the time. But if people, say, I'd like to see an example that does this, if you let me know, it's easy enough to generate them and put them in, because I've got functioning code.
Matt Miller, one suggestion you might want to also consider is providing the examples as a machine ingestible format in some other repo.
That actually exists.
Okay. I hadn't checked yet.
Yes, there actually is in the COSE working group.
Yeah, it's COSE-WG is the GitHub organization, so one of the reasons that we put COSE issues into its own repo is that we have, it gives us the flexibility of having multiple repos that we can refer to all the issues in. So there are some examples that are just, seaboard blobs.
They're actually a bit more than that.
Well,
right. So just to clarify a little bit more.
So basically, I stole your JSON structure to describe them, and then there's also the actual blobs themselves.
Nice. But to that point, you might want to add a reference, make sure there's a reference to that, an informative reference to that in the document.
There actually is a pointer in Appendix C to that.
Okay. Because that didn't seem to be a problem for the RFC editor with 7520, so it seems very worthwhile to do here.
Good to know.
Okay. Next, partly in response to an issue that Hannes raised, partly in response to the fact that CDDL is not actually a produced document, so putting it in the core of the document seems a little bit odd to use a grammar which is not solidified and may change in the future. I'm in the process of pulling all of the references to the grammar out of the main core of the document now that it seems to have stabilized down, and moving the descriptive language into an appendix, and then going back and rereading the sections to make sure that they still read, given that I can't refer to the grammar itself anymore. There have been a couple of people who have said, no, I actually would prefer seeing the grammar in the text itself. So this is probably a good item for discussion at this point.
This is Hannes. The couple of people were these two people.
No, there's actually been a couple other
Mike
people.
as well?
And at least one more.
Yeah, let's discuss it. So I can reiterate my comments again if that is appropriate. So what I'm unhappy with these type of things is typically you have to provide the text twice. Once you describe it as in textual form and then as the formal grammar, those tend to get out of sync in like pretty much any document I've seen. In this specific case, the document is simple enough that actually the formal notation doesn't actually get you too far. It says a message has like 3 fields or so, and whether you introduce some fancy grammar or not is not really the important part. The tricky part here is all the crypto stuff, which even if you generate code, it wouldn't generate that code to begin with. And then I was complaining about the fact that this references this sort of work in progress document, where we create this artificial dependency, which you may seem to have gotten hold about by incorporating the content into the the specification, or did I understood that incorrectly? So in any case,
No,
I don't want to have
it's
a normative reference to an work in progress document.
Right.
No, it's the fact that it's a work in progress document is handled by the fact it's an informational reference. It's not normative.
Right. The grammars are currently sort of informational, and it's the actual descriptive text that is normative.
Okay.
And that was the result of that discussion on the list. That was the chairs weighed in on that as well, because we do not want to have a normative reference to a document that doesn't have a home or schedule. But an informative reference to say, hey, here's this thing that was described and we find it useful, and maybe you'll find it useful. General sentiments seem to be that was okay. And also you can keep in mind that there are different flavors of developer out there in the world. Developers like me will read the examples before we read anything else, and we'll just program based on those. There are developers, however, that read the formal grammar first and will write a yak parser or something crazy and go off and run with that. And then there are others who actually read the specification text, which is always kind of my last stop on the tour. But and I say this as a spec editor. So I think it's important that those always remain in sync, and we will endeavor to do so in that document. It's always a risk when you're repeating information, but that's not going to go away.
Yeah, Carsten, I'm not sure I was joking when I said I'm going to write a little generator that generates English text from the CDDL. But what I stood up for was while we're sitting here, there's another working group over there in the other room called Anima, who have a spec that is called GRASP, which is specified in CDDL. So we're not the only one working with this.
Their mistakes are not our problem, Karsten.
That's true.
Matt Miller. I just wanted to say here, I think partly to Justin's point that, various people look at various different portions of the document, and also understanding that, having saying the same thing multiple times can lead to problems. To that point, RFCs are documents that go through an incredible amount of review. That problem, not saying that it's a minimal problem, but saying that's probably less important to consider here than the containment of our ideas and what we're trying to express, and putting those in more or less the same place helps the various different people that try to read things to understand them. This is also where having examples all the way at the end can sometimes be a loss for some people, simply because they end up bouncing around documents. So I've certainly seen a lot of value in having things with it where they're being heavily discussed, and that I think that is worth consideration.
So I raised this misalignment thing because actually in the version that I read, that I commented, which was, I think, version of 5 and 4, there was this exact mismatch between the content, between the CDDL and the actual content.
That's why it's a draft, and that's a valid issue to raise.
And I was also wondering why CDDL, for some of these really basic things, like a message, it's either this message or the other one, or it has 5 different fields. Even ABNF would be perfectly fine, which is probably more familiar to most people. But the other thing, you would think that the IETF review process catches many of those errors. And I was also so naive when I worked on XML schema, relax and G schema, that would actually be true. It's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, so let me be clear when I think to reinforce Matt's point, when we say that the process catches the errors, what we're really saying is that it's your job, everybody in the COSE working group, it's your job to catch those errors. So yes, finding out that, there's an inconsistency between this example and this grammar and this text, that is absolutely a valid issue to raise in the draft form of the document, and the editor needs to make sure it gets fixed.
And it's also actually, in our case, one of the nice reasons for making the grammar in there, and in my opinion, actually preferably even normative, is that we actually do have a tool which checks the examples against the grammar, but not against the actual text. And in your case, when you read it, it turned out that the CDDL was actually correct and the text was wrong. So, I mean, yes. And it's also actually much simpler to keep them in sync if they're all together, as opposed to in vastly different places in the document.
It's not that.
Mike Jones, having read all of 01 and just having read all of 06, I like that Jim has the formal productions of these are the data structures used right next to the description of the data structure. Because I think, as Matt was saying, as I'm paging through the thing, and you don't always read things in a linear fashion. I'm turning pages of paper that gives my eyes something to hook onto and say, oh, there's the encryption data structure, and there's the HMAC data structure, and your eye finds those things and you go to them. It makes it a much more readable document, so I like the way it is.
All right, I'm going to cut the line after this because we're starting to rat hole.
So Matt Miller, one more, just to clarify, I'm not trying to say that, having these things described in multiple ways and that we got, will be fixed by having a long process. But what I was really trying to get at is once we have an RFC number, this thing lives more or less forever. And, we can go back to revise it by putting together a brand new document that obsoletes it or updates it. These things live for a long time. That's partly why the review process takes so long. It's on us to make sure we get it right, but that also means that putting these things together and trying to get a good structure with a couple of ways to see this for all the various people that are out there, I do think is really worthwhile.
Since Mike brought up something, it's actually not related to CDDL, but I haven't checked it yet. In the version of 5 that I read, the data structures that you introduced were not the same as the data structures in the CBOR document. Maybe it was just different abbreviations or something else, but you introduced some new data structures that didn't exist in CBOR. Did you change that?
I may have used different names for them, but they are the same data structures.
Okay. Would it be useful to use the same names when they are the same data structures, just to avoid confusion?
Yeah, that's a terminology consistency. That's kind of an editorial thing. Feel free to file an explicit issue for that. I mean, you can do so right now if you like.
Okay. I'm going to request that the editors do a formal consensus call on the question of moving the CDDL either to an appendix or to leave it in place.
Okay. The chairs, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna take a hum in the room for this, and we'll do a formal consensus call on the list. But I'd like to get a feel for where people are coming from. If you think the CDDL should go in the appendix, please hum now. If you think the okay, so kind of a weak hum for that. If you think the CDDL should remain in line, please hum now. Moderately strong hum for that one. If you think the CDDL should be abolished from the document, please hum now. And because we missed it last time, if you don't give a flying rat about CDDL, please hum now. There's actually a moderately strong hum for the flying rat. So I think we have a new cozy tradition. Because nobody in this working group actually cares about what we're working on. That's what I'm getting, which is not very comforting as a chair, let me tell you. Okay, we will do, the chairs will do a formal consensus call on the list for the location and specification of the CDDL. Rough sentiment of the room is to keep it in line as it currently stands in 06. No, as non-normative, as informative. So yeah, it was, it has, since the discussion on the list, it has not been brought up again as it being a normative reference. It will be an informative reference akin to an example.
It was never a normative reference.
Yeah, sure.
I'd love to, but I can't.
Give me a CDDL RFC and then we'll talk.
we're going to be done before then.
Exactly.
Okay. The last thing is had a review comment asking some questions about how fields were transported versus how fields were being encoded in the context structure that we are using for the KDFs. And I need to go through and finish making sure that I've got it clarified and then send it back for review on that. MIME types. We are registering right now a couple of MIME types, and after a discussion with Karsten, he would like us to actually change to registering a lot of MIME types, basically one for every one of the different COSE top-level types, as opposed to one generic COSE one. I was actually thinking about addressing this with the addition of a optional parameter, which is how the S-MIME group did it, where there was a parameter which says this is a security thing, which is the top level of the message. So we had an S-MIME type which said this is a signed object. We also actually ended up putting in a couple of other ones which showed up, but I don't know that they were ever used much, which told us from a MIME processor point perspective, the ability, you gave us the ability to tell you what the content was that was in there and what other security services you had, so that the MIME processor outside could actually start setting this up. It's not clear that this is actually either A, of big interest, or B, actually that important, given that right now, I don't know that we have that many cases where we're going to be transmitting COSE inside of MIME objects, or inside MIME objects.
This is Justin from the floor, not as chair. Since the COSE structure has a message type sitting up on top of it, wouldn't it be redundant to also specify that in the MIME type of the surrounding object?
The message type field is vanished, and there is now a optional preceding tag.
Okay, I thought I must have missed that.
Matt Miller. Personally, I only usually deal with things that come over across HTTP or HTTPS and RESTful-ish type sort of things, and having a lot of S-MIME types complicates my life. Having a lot of MIME types complicates my life. I personally would rather just have one or two. That makes it a lot easier for me.
Carsten Moorman, the reason why one should have a MIME type or media type, as they're really called, for each of the different kinds of things that you might want to have, is that you want to be able to put them into the accept parameter of HTTP or CoAP. So you should be able to say, hey, give me an encrypted structure. Or you should be able to say, hey, give me a signed structure. So in CoAP, we actually have an option that is called content format, which is an integer version of this media type. And I would fully expect that many CoAP applications will use the accept parameter with that to specify what kind of data they actually want to have. Now, they may actually go ahead and define another media type for the specific application they have. But in many cases, it will just be convenient to say, okay, it's sufficient if the COSE spec actually provides the granularity that together with the context of the application makes clear what kind of data I want to have. Now, having said all that, in CoAP, the table that associates a media type and a content encoding with a content format number does provide a way to add parameters. So if people really think that having application/COSE plus CBOR semicolon type equals encrypted is better than having something else I won't spell out right now, that could be accommodated. Right now we have that in exactly one place with text plain, where the version of text plain that CORP uses always uses the care set UTF-8. And I personally would like not to increase this number beyond 1, but if it has to be, it's not going to hurt us that much. But it has to be a static parameter. If you have something that can take 10,000 different values, that doesn't help because we would need 10,000 registrations.
Okay, so that's not clear at the moment.
No, it's not clear. I think that we need to have
I'll
more.
raise it as an issue on.
I think we need to have more discussion on the list of where people want to go.
I think we're shooting for KISS here, right? The keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
I can see that you might want to do the plus on the first one. Clearly, the last additional encapsulating of inner types, like the draft that you and I wrote, Jim, is completely inappropriate here. I think the first one allows you to have some extensibility in case somebody comes up to the next religious encoding war that they want to have, but you might do something completely different. So just do the KISS approach and be done with it.
All right. And let the notes show there was a thumbs up in the back of the room for that.
Okay, there's a section currently in the document which is currently titled the mandatory to implement thing, which is basically says we don't do mandatory to implement. One of the things that after going through this, I'm debating and probably will say that what I want to do is pull this from where it is, move it to a different section and say guidelines for applications. So in point of fact, what we probably want to do is instead is not only say that we're not doing mandatory implementation, but what we want to say is as an application, when you profile the COSE message spec, you really need to do the following things. And I don't think that's going to be very controversial in terms of doing it. It may be pretty controversial in terms of what's in it. But until you actually see a version of that, you're not going to be able to say I did it wrong. Okay. The ACE has raised a couple of issues that I just kind of was able to remember off my top of my head and have done a few things in the document for. The first was basically an issue that came from Hannes about doing a creation time. There was discussion on the list where we basically couldn't decide upon what the data format of that creation time should even be. So we didn't really argue about the semantics. It's currently sitting in the document without an added value as an integer for a Unix time. It's not clear that that's the right answer. And unless we actually have some people who really want to stand up for it and say we need it, I'm actually just planning to remove it from the spec right now.
I raised this issue in context of timestamps because for replay protection, of course, one can argue, like Mike did previously, is this an application layer concept or not?
Right.
Hard to say because the boundary is a little bit fuzzy in some sense, I believe. Maybe it is, maybe not. But ultimately, for many applications, you would need that. So either you have a replay-based, sort of a sequence number-based replay protection or a timestamp-based, or maybe a nonce-based, but it somehow has to be, something has to be there. Otherwise, there's no replay protection.
The problem I have is as of right now, it's like there's so many different types of replay protection that it's hard for us to make, I think, good intelligent guesses yet at this point as to what the proper ones to define are.
Well, they're not. There's three. There's three different types. So, and maybe it is an application layer concept and needs to be put somewhere else, but we need to put it somewhere. It's probably easier to like.
In point of fact, if we're actually using that, if we're actually really using this for replay, I would argue that this is in many respects the right place to do it, because you do not want it in the payload. Because I want to actually do my replay detection before, for example, I decrypt the message. I mean, I can do the replay check before I even bother checking for integrity. I mean, if it's a bad value, I don't care if it's the right bad value, is still a bad value. I'm going to toss it.
So this is Justin. I think that given the other discussion that we've had today, with regard to both the list of proposed mods from the ACE group and this whole concept of the COSE token, I think all three of these kind of get subsumed into that discussion, and hopefully we will see these actually raised and run to conclusion in those contexts. I think that's the appropriate context for this discussion.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Okay. The sequence number could be used for anti-replays. But it also has a very definite use for how it's being, how the Oscar, however you pronounce it, spec is planning to use it. So that I think it makes sense for us to go ahead and define that structure in here. The only question with that is 4-byte integer sufficiently long? Does it need to be a binary value? And when I talked with them last night about it, they were saying we think a 4-byte integer is sufficient.
Nobody needs more than 640K of RAM. All right.
Well, basically after that point, roll your key.
Right.
Mike Jones, Microsoft. I will say that I support the ability of applications to define application fields that they put in the headers that they do with as they will. But as a simplifying principle, I believe all the stuff that should be in the COSE message spec are things that pertain to the cryptographic operations. And we allow the use of the registry that we defined for applications to add other fields that have meaning to the application. But it's not our job to presuppose what the application is that's going to use the cryptographic wrapper format that we're defining.
So Mike, just to be clear, are you suggesting that if something like a COSE token were to be ginned up, then it would be able to extend the fields in the wrapper?
Yes,
in addition
as
to
an
defining the payload?
application of COSE, like any other application, it could use the registry to extend the field set.
All right.
And just like the ACE applications or
Right.
the other applications can do so, but it shouldn't be our job to do that.
Okay, that is a fair possible track for this to take. And I think, to me, sitting as chair, that means that the whole should a COSE token exist and where discussion really, really needs to happen. Because a lot of stuff is wrapping back around to this. So let's do that, guys.
Okay, the last item up here, we had a discussion last night, and I think we have come to a consensus on dealing with the algorithm optional, making the algorithm identifier optional.
All right, and that was it for slides.
And that's it for slides.
All right, so I'm gonna.
Now we're pulling up the database.
Yeah, I'm just gonna find it.
Basically, we're going to leave it as mandatory here, and they're going to profile it as being optional, and make sure that it gets authenticated. Because that's the issue, is making sure it gets authenticated.
Okay.
Can you wait until you read the document?
Thank you, Hannes. You're already doing better than your chairs. Seriously, when did there's still a type tag, right? Because I seriously, I swear I saw that in 06.
It may be. I think it is an 06. It's been removed since then.
Oh, well, don't do that to me. All right. So these are issues that are live
Okay.
in the
Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. You're going to do last call. You're going to do a request for comments on that.
right before I go to any other ones. I'm explaining what I'm about to do.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. These are all live issues that are in the Cozy Issues Tracker in the Cozy WG GitHub organization, so you can follow along with the home game as you see fit. We do accept comments on the issues and also replies to these to the list. This is wired up so that on a good day, it sends everything to the list as well. Every once in a while, GitHub forgets how to send email. We don't know why. Yeah, it's a little bit higher than that than 60/40 for me, but it's, you know, it kind of works. Regardless, do occasionally check the issue tracker, and if you want something to not be forgotten, this is a good place to put it because we will rip through these. So anyway, we are going to raise we're going to bring this up on the list. Seems to have a pretty good idea which way this is going to go, so we're going to do that. Assigning integers to all algorithms.
That will be done.
That will be done in the next one? Okay.
Well,
so,
no, it will be done before we're finished.
So should I add an issue for finish the draft?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, dear. I'm not going to do that. Okay. So some of these you can see are just kind of, make sure we don't forget this kind of stuff. And that actually is valid, as much grief as I'm giving Jim on this. So
I talked about that one.
Okay. An optional recipients field.
That is done for the encryption. It was not done yet for Mac. Part of the question was, is there actually a real valid case in the CoAP working group to do Mac only rather than do encryption? And I haven't heard back that there really is yet. I'm still trying to discuss that with them.
Okay, I think we actually just saw an example of that in the previous presentation. So,
no, you saw an example that said that they wanted it. It wasn't a use case where they needed it yet.
Okay. All right. So a lot of these are editorial, and I'm just going to skip over most of the editorial ones.
This is the CDDL. Skip it.
I'm getting there. Yes, Hannes?
Use case. Take a the existing JWT.
Right.
You sign it or Mac it. That's it.
Right.
That's a use case.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't we want to do something similar
how are you identifying who the recipient is?
It's whoever gets it.
And what key is being used?
Whatever key you told them.
That's the context identifier that was presented earlier in the presentation. We did not. So there, we obviously need to set something up upfront.
And the other question is, would you actually prefer to encrypt it so that the content is invisible except to the end recipient?
The content will be invisible anyway because we use transport layer security underneath it. Like in not always, not in all scenarios, but for example, in a multi-hop case, we would have transport layer security between the hops and then on top of end-to-end potentially. If you don't have TLS and you want to have confidentiality, then you would always encrypt it. But do we always encrypt the tokens?
Right, and remember the OSCAP is not the only use of COSY.
Right, but he was asking for an example, for an example use case. At least that's how I envision it, and I think also in context of the JWT, it's not always encrypted.
No.
Right, and it's often is not.
If it's not, it is the recipient is in that case is the recipient implicit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is far and away the most common use case of JWT.
Right.
Is a signed either asymmetrically or MAC'd.
Okay.
This is getting
I don't
there.
care about signed, but yeah.
It was either signed or MAC'd, and because in JWS they're the same effectively, and it's whoever is processing it, they know from context where to get the key. So that is far and away looking at what's actually been used and deployed.
Right.
That's how it's been
used. That gives me a reason to think about saying, yes, it makes sense, and to think about how to do it.
Okay.
I mean, before then, it was basically most of the cases that were being presented to me were probably better done as encrypted messages than MAC messages.
Okay, that's fair. And if nothing else, to keep with the "what would Jose do" mantra, I would like to see us at least take a look at what that would look like and see if that makes sense.
That's easy.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
So Mike Jones, back to issue 11 or 10, which is what we're discussing.
Yes, thank
My
you.
last comment was a request to Jim to please put in examples of a MAC without a recipient and a signature without a recipient, so we can see exactly what these look like.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking.
Right.
A signature without a recipient.
Yeah.
Right, without an explicitly identified recipient.
Yeah.
Recipient signatures don't have recipients. Signatures only have originators.
Great. Then it's easy to leave it out. So there's no problem not having a recipient when there isn't one. Why are we arguing? Next. Yeah. Yeah, no, we should have examples for all of those. I agree. And that's basically what I asked, is to at least see what everything looks like with that structure and make sure we can accommodate that. Can we do that? Okay. I'm going to skip through a lot of the stuff that's been marked editorial. I will take a quick second to say, because we've only got about 5 minutes to wrap. We have been labeling things with whether they're technical or editorial. So this one's technical and this one's editorial. And we've been labeling them with which draft they were reported against. There are a couple of other tags that are going to be going in here. And as Jim gets them incorporated into a draft release, he's going to be marking them with the completed tag. The chairs will be doing the sanitization of closing issues and making sure that they're actually addressed and actually in a published draft and things like that, so that we make sure that we make sure we don't inadvertently lose track of things. Keep in mind, however, that nothing ever actually goes away in GitHub. Closed issues are actually still available for review. We can always reopen them, and we can always submit new things. So if an issue gets closed and you want to complain about it, go ahead, complain about it. We can raise that up again. So, like I said, skipping most of the editorial stuff. Counter signatures, anybody have thoughts on that? Mike doesn't like counter signatures. Other people don't like.
A piece of mail went to the list. I outlined for the co-op people where I envisioned it. They're going back to see if it actually works.
Okay. Okay. Sounds like we have a clear way forward on that one.
Talked about that.
Yep, we already talked about that one, and this is going to be wrapped into the code. Maybe we need to make a cozy token tag for this. That one as well. We talked about that one. External AAD.
All of the co-op people are going to stand up and say violently, "Yes, we want it."
I'm getting some nods. So
it's Ludwig sites. It's basically a way of reducing the over-the-wire message size. You have parts of the application layer, in that case co-op, that we want to integrity protect, but we don't want to duplicate them in the cozy message structure.
Okay.
So this is our use case for external AAD.
Okay, thank you. So
Mike and I will fight that one out.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, this is a case where there's more than what would Jose do, because the W3C went and did their own thing as well, which was Jose-ish, Hose-ish, I guess. I don't know. Hosed, yeah. Anyway, let's. I think there are W3C people floating around this meeting, so we can't bash them too much. But anyway, the web crypto thing is a thing that exists. We do need to be cognizant of this, and also what Jose did
And we should strive for parity, consistency where it makes sense, and we should have a pretty dang good reason when we don't have it. So, all right, simple. Okay. Editorial. This is a normative thing, and this is actually, I think, might be along the lines of the CBOR strict mode or whatever it was called.
Yeah, which
Yeah, so I would like feedback from the working group of whether we should just pin things to CBOR strict mode or allow
there
sloppy
is no
mode.
such thing as really strict.
Well, I know, but we need to decide how sloppy we want to allow this thing to be. So Jose, because of the nature of JSON, Jose had to make a couple of concessions in this regard. I have a feeling we're going to have to do the same thing, and we just need to be very, very, very clear about it, or we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot with interop. This is something that really needs to be argued out. If this is separate from the doing anything with RSA 1.5, if we want RSA PSS, that could be in the core document. It could be in a secondary document. There's seems to be better argument for keeping this around than for keeping RSA 1.5. So I would like to see us actually figure out, one, if we want this, and two, where it should go. The sentiment I was getting from previous chatter about the RSA stuff is that people were generally fine with it if it weren't in the core document. So I'm getting a couple of nods from the room, and let's hammer this out on the list. This shouldn't be too hard. Famous last words. Compression header.
I'm violently opposed to doing compression at this point, and that the reason is crime. Basically, TLS has undergone a whole slew of potential attacks where doing compression without knowing what the content is allows attackers to potentially learn what you're doing. So I think that until we have really figured out what we're doing, we should just kill compression.
Okay, and also context for this, remember we're trying to make these things really freaking small naturally. So, you know.
Actually, Ludwig Seitz here. Actually, there's a case against compression because it will reduce code size on the constraint, increase code size on the constraint device if this is like a must implement thing.
Right.
And then
Or at
I
least a
really
must
don't like
understand.
it.
Okay. Please add that as a comment to the issue, or when you get a chance, so we don't lose that sentiment. All right. So jocks have a use field basically, and cozy keys don't.
It's essentially duplicate. Right. It's essentially duplicate information of key ops.
Sort of. That was actually a big argument in Jose. Yes. That.
Right, but key ops was the one added to make the W3C happy.
Right. Okay, so that's something we need to figure out if key ops is sufficient, or if we need the two-part structure that Jose has. So this is, again, we need to ask what would Jose do, right, and figure out if we agree with that.
And Jose basically says use one or the other, not both.
Yep. Okay, editorial. Okay, so yeah,
this is waiting for a response from mine.
Yeah, so this is a question about basically special casing things in one particular place in order to make the messages shorter by a couple of bytes, if I understand this.
Yeah, 1 byte.
Yeah, one byte saving for special encoding versus general purpose parsing. So we need to figure out which of those constrained optimizations we are happier with, because there are valid arguments for both. There's message size versus code size here very easily. So yeah, this we already had. This is going to be in the context of a lot of the ACE and CoAP stuff, I think.
And IVs make it move around anyway.
Right. So okay, so that's pending some other work. That's fine. Editorial terms. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff where the terms are still kind of getting settled. As you guys read the drafts, help pick these things out. I know, speaking as somebody who's edited these docs, when you're this close to the text, really easy to miss this kind of stuff. So definitely do this and keep everything honest. It's very helpful. So description. And most of this is going to be editorial type of stuff. This one's not tagged.
Yeah, that's because I haven't figured out what it is says yet.
You know what?
I haven't figured out what it says yet.
Okay. Tell us whether the keys are in clear as part of the cozy message or not. This sounds like that is a that is an editorial. No, this is technical. Okay, so it sounds like it might be short on a normative there.
I don't know. I don't know what because I don't understand his issue yet. So until I did that, I was going to tag it.
Okay, that sounds good. We've got some terms that definitely need some definition throughout all of this. So we are actually out of time. We're almost done with this list. I want people to think about whether we want stable specifications for registering these short values. There are some strong opinions on either side of that debate. Please, let's figure this out. Grammar nits. And finally, the last one I created was whether or not we want to create a cozy token. We are going to have this discussion of whether or not we're going to create a cozy token, and I have a strong feeling that one is going to be created. So, all right, thank you all very much for the first non-inaugural cozy meeting, and we will see you in some way, shape, or form in Buenos Aires. All right. What's that? That may, yes, with flying rats, most likely. So we seem to care most about flying rats and less about technology in this working group.
That's a national dish of.
Oh, stop right there. Do not put that in the notes. And I hope Micho is already cut off. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the week. I'm not going to be responsible for having like any nationality mad at us for that. Rat. So yeah, flying rat. It's so it's rat. Yeah. RAT. Yes. A rat is like a big mouse kind of thing. So, yeah. So a flying rat is something that doesn't exist.